So hello everyone. Welcome to JAM813, bringing your BlackBerry Java apps to BlackBerry 10. So just to give you guys a quick overview of the agenda today, I'll be starting off with a brief introduction about myself, and then I'll be passing on to my colleagues here. So my name is Pratik Sapra. I work on the dev relations team, and I work more on the native Cascades side of things. And I'll be actually covering the Cascades piece of the presentation today.
I'm Graham. I work with DevRel, just like Pratik, but I'm on the WebWorks HTML5 AIR team. And I'll be talking about porting your Java to WebWorks or your sort of legacy WebWorks apps from the older platforms to the new BlackBerry 10 platform.
Hello everybody, I'm Amit Gupta. I represent InfoStretch Solutions based in Ahmedabad. So we basically develop applications for BlackBerry, and together with Pratik and Graham, I'll be covering the case study of porting BlackBerry Java application to BlackBerry 10.
Thanks, guys. So just a brief overview of the agenda. So we'll be covering 3 porting options today. The first one being HTML5 WebWorks, Android runtime, as well as the native SDK and Cascades. So just to set some expectations, we have a lot to cover. So we'll be just covering a high-level overview of each of the porting options, and what we will be pointing you guys towards is if you decide on a particular porting option, we'll be giving you some pointers for the sessions you can go to find out more about each of the porting option. And finally, we'll be ending the session with a case study. Amit actually ported 2 of his BlackBerry Java apps to Cascades, so he'll be giving you lots of tips and tricks, best practices, and so on how to port your application from BlackBerry Java to Cascades. And finally, as time permits, we'll end with a Q&A. If you don't have enough time for a Q&A, we'll be heading to Ask the Experts area, and you guys can just come there and ask us any questions you might have. So there are basically 3 porting options that we plan to cover in this session, and these are the 3 recommended porting options for porting your BlackBerry Java app to BlackBerry 10. The first one being HTML5 WebWorks, and the second one being Java Android runtime, and finally the third one being the native SDK or Cascades. So I'll be passing on now to Graham to cover the HTML5 WebWorks option for porting your Java app.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so HTML5 and WebWorks. So some of you here, again, you're going to be taking your Java apps and or actually, is anyone here looking to make a BlackBerry 10 WebWorks app for the first time? Got 1 person, a couple people. All right, good. So yeah, there's some of you like this that are going to be in this boat that are going to be Java developers just looking to use WebWorks sort of for the first time, go straight from pure Java to WebWorks. And has anyone here written a WebWorks app before on the older platform, and now they're looking to migrate to BlackBerry 10?
I'm just checking.
Nobody? No? Okay. So here's a quick look, just like Java in general. We have a Java app. It's architected a certain way. Not so worried about how classes and methods work, but sort of UI is like the big hurdle when transitioning from Java to let's say WebWorks. And we've all written Java apps, and UIs are extremely tedious to write. I mean, I've written Java UI and I hate it, which is why I'm such a big fan of the WebWorks platform. Because with UI you have to worry about screen size, different resolutions. For me, anyways, it takes me a huge amount of development time to make a Java user interface. And especially if you want to make small changes to your app, I find it just takes a lot of time as opposed to with HTML5, using CSS and HTML markup. I find it really easy to make visual changes. So we're migrating from Java. Our Java UI is going to go from just views and controllers to sort of web UI, which is HTML5 and CSS, and JavaScript for your sort of controlling your interface and behavior. And then here we have models and APIs like app logic and accessing the actual phone's APIs. Obviously app logic is written in Java, whereas in WebWorks is written in JavaScript, and your phone APIs are JavaScript and WebWorks. Extensions. So the phone APIs are either, a lot of them now are actually just like pure HTML5. So like, for example, like get user media for like getting camera feed. You don't actually use an extension or use like a phone API. It's actually just pure HTML5. But other things, yeah, you will need to use WebWorks APIs like for like accessing like someone's PIN or sending a text message. Or you have to write your own custom WebWorks extension. There's things that, for UI especially, to make it easier to port your apps, there's tons of frameworks, tons of libraries. Like we saw today at the keynote, bbui.js, gives you a very sort of native look and feel, like a cascade sort of look and feel to your apps, which is fantastic. There's also like Sencha, Dojo, jQuery. So these are like great libraries and frameworks for getting like a really nice, good-looking, functional UI right out of the box with fairly minimal work. And then for CSS, there's great ways to style your app, like Bootstrap, for example, from Twitter. They do a really good job with that. Right, where was I? Right, yes. So also you have to identify which classes you need to sort of bring over to WebWorks. Right, so you're going to have like all your Java classes that you use to access your phone APIs for all your functionality, like BBM integration or push. So you just got to basically go to development documentation, developer.blackberry.com, and just try to find which APIs, like how you're going to write your new APIs in JavaScript. And then obviously then there's also extensions. So does everyone know what a WebWorks extension is? So it's a bit of beyond the scope of this talk, like this talk, or this session, sorry. But they're writing for a custom extension. So like you want to write a new JavaScript function that acts as a phone API, like something specific to the phone, like for example, like push or BB integration. Those ones are already built in, but there's ones you can just write yourself for grabbing like camera streams or face detection or whatever. So there's actually a ton that's already in our GitHub. So you just go there and pull those down as opposed to writing them from scratch. Like it's very unlikely that you have to write your own extension for your app. There's probably one that's already written, or you can just use whatever WebWorks provides. And here is migrating from sort of legacy WebWorks, like from OS 7, BlackBerry OS 7, to like BlackBerry 10. You don't have to really worry about the UI. UI is pretty much just sort of, is going to transition over just fine. The only thing that you pretty much lose is that trackpad, like that sort of navigation functionality that you programmed before into your old apps. You don't really, BlackBerry 10 doesn't have that. But other than that, UI stays the same. Extensions are different. Extensions no longer in Air and Java. They're in C and C++. And the phone APIs are a bit different too. They're sort of like, they're changed to adhere more to Cordova, so that phone gap core, just so that there's easier integration for that platform. You probably just skip this slide. Right, and then you got to test your efforts. So as you're migrating your app, you've got to make sure you're constantly testing, because there's going to be a lot of work to try to transition over. So there's Ripple, which is from the Tiny Hippo guys, a really great extension for Chrome. And there's also actually testing on device. So yeah, Chrome is really good, especially if you want to support not just BlackBerry 10, but your older WebWorks apps as well. Ripple's just an amazing extension. But obviously nothing beats real devices. But I would never test on the fly, like using real device. I just find like constantly deploying to your device really, really slow. So Chrome is like the Chrome extension of Ripple is really good just for like testing as you're developing, and then when you're in your final stages of porting your app, actually test on a real device. And then there's also Web Inspector. Does everyone know what Web Inspector is? No? Nobody? Everybody? Well, Web Inspector is this really cool feature. You can set your app into debug mode. And so you can deploy it to your device, and then over Wi-Fi, you can type in the IP address of your device. And as long as your device has Web Inspector enabled and your sort of development mode turned on, you can just access in the browser like how you would use like Firebug or just sort of development tools in Chrome. You can see all your markup. You can get like JavaScript profiling, take a look at memory management, actually type in your JavaScript functions and actually test your functions like in a console. So it's a really, really neat feature, and it's amazing for debugging on the device and actually optimizing for the device specifically. So actually, when we go to actually port our app, you're going to remember to, whether you reuse your old look or you create a new look, try to like save yourself some time, reuse assets as much as possible. Identify like how you're going to write your UI in HTML5, and utilize those frameworks that I mentioned before as much as possible. Here's a quick example. This is just like a sort of some sample code. Doesn't really matter what it does. It's just like a list. It just generates a list on a page, and when you click that list item, it takes you to a new page. And so obviously in Java, we have to instantiate all our UI elements. We have to add them to the screen. Then we have to attach all the event handlers, sort of whereas in HTML5 or WebWorks, we can use, let's say, for example, BBUI. And the import is much simpler. It's just like one line of code, import. It's just like a script tag, bring in BBUI, and we just write a bunch of little elements on the page, which is our list. And then using the onClick attribute, we say, like, when someone clicks this or taps it on the touch screen, push to a new screen. So it's actually much cleaner. That's why I prefer WebWorks. It's much easier to write UIs. So we already talked about this before. You want to identify chunks of code in WebWorks that have WebWorks or JS framework and actually write them out. So like saving to persistence, database, connections, device info, all those things. They're going to be very different from Java or the legacy WebWorks to BlackBerry 10. So you really have to kind of troll through the development documentation website to find out all of these. There's just way too many changes to obviously list out in a session. Here's just like another small example, like in WebWorks from like before BlackBerry 10, to grab the pin, you do blackberry.identity.pin. But now with trying to adhere to Cordova for phone gap, we use blackberry.identity.uuid. It's a little bit more generic. It's not BlackBerry specific, but it just makes WebWorks a little bit more easily portable and integrated into the Cordova framework for phone gap. Right, so extensions. So some APIs will have equivalent WebWorks APIs. So again, like that pin one, it's not the same to BlackBerry 10. And in terms of like phone-specific stuff, like you don't actually necessarily have to use a WebWorks API or an extension. A lot of it actually is done with just regular HTML5. So if you're up to speed with HTML5, you can probably write the vast majority of your app and have a very native-looking app in just HTML5 without using phone-specific APIs or extensions. And so in all these extensions that people have written, if you do need to use one, and you find that WebWorks doesn't actually provide you a function for accessing something on the phone, more than likely you don't have to write your own. You probably just go to GitHub, just take one that someone's written and committed to the community. And that's pretty much it. And so then what's new in terms for WebWorks in BlackBerry 10? One of the things you have to do now is you have to include a webworks.js file. It's just like a little script you have to just plop into your app, and you just have to wait for WebWorks. Basically, you have to add a little listener at the end of your page or your markup just to say, when WebWorks is ready, now you can actually start doing stuff with your app. Whereas in previous versions of WebWorks, you didn't have to do that before. For the config XML, a new thing for BlackBerry 10 is you have to add the ID hello world, or not hello world, but the title of your application. And here, I just put here a bunch of different icon sizes and splash screen sizes because there's so many between the dev alpha B, the release devices. It's just constantly changing. So you got to keep your eye on this because I don't even think the 150 for the icon size, the one at the bottom, is correct anymore. It's constantly changing. So be sure to always be looking at the developer site for how you build your config.xml. And again, here, always the trouble with screen sizes, especially when you're writing Java UI. With HTML5, it's a little easier. With CSS, we can have responsive design. But one of the things you got to make sure is you can't pinch and zoom your app like you can with a web page. So the next slide here, I have a good code snippet. So you just place this after the head of your tag. Like in the very first script in your body tag, you should have this script. And this essentially, it crosses no matter what device, platform This will make sure that your images look nice and crisp. It's like 1 pixel is 1 pixel. It's not CSS pixels, and you can't pinch and zoom. And that's pretty much it. And then so anything else that's coming for WebWorks, keep an eye on the roadmap, the HTML5 roadmap. There's tons of stuff coming. Things got released, I think, today. The Gold SDK obviously is coming December 11th, was it? Something like that, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There's one more. Oh, right, yeah, look at this. Forgot about this one. So yeah, so sessions. So I think definitely some sessions to check out, getting started with the web on BlackBerry, Jam841. 826, give your BlackBerry 10 web apps the native look and feel. Obviously, a great way to do that is using bbui.js. And definitely check out Jam858, which is HTML5 web apps for enterprise supporting BlackBerry 6 and beyond. All right, so I'm passing back to you, Pratik. Here you are.
Thank you. So now we're going to talk about our second porting option, which is the Android runtime. So this option is for Java developers, BlackBerry Java developers who have an Android Java app and want to quickly port their Android Java app onto BB10. So, so BlackBerry runtime for Android is basically a Android 2.3.3 Gingerbread implementation running on top of Playbook tablet OS as well as BlackBerry 10 OS. So what this allows you to do is it enables you to port your Android app, get up and running in absolutely no time with no code changes to your app. Another thing we wanted to do with the Android runtime is provide you with the same look and feel as you expect from native BlackBerry 10 apps. So what the Android runtime ensures is when you're running your app on BlackBerry 10, to the user, it's perceived as a native app, and it's kind of hard to tell the difference that it's an Android app versus all the other native apps on the device. So that was one of the key goals of the Android runtime. So what you need to be careful about when porting your application is API compatibility. So the Android runtime supports about 70% of Android apps can run out of the box without any code changes on the runtime. But again, not all Android APIs are supported due to time constraints. Certain APIs have platform limitations, OS limitations, and again, certain APIs are only used by a very small percentage of apps. So again, it doesn't, given the life cycle of choosing between the APIs, we decided to sort of exclude some of the APIs from being supported. So some of the key APIs not supported here, I've listed them in this table. So Bluetooth, VoIP, NFC. If you're doing Android native, that's not supported. Google Maps. And again, I mean, there are workarounds. So for example, if you're using Google Maps and if you want to work around the fact that you're using the Google APIs, you can always have a web control in your Android application to render the maps in more like a web view rather than using the Google Maps API. So you can actually work around some of these limitations. Now, we wanted to make this process absolutely easy for you. So what we have done is we have provided you all the tools necessary to easily port your Android Java app. So we have a web checker tool. So when you provide your APK to the web checker tool, it actually checks for the API usage and tells you whether your app is compatible or whether it's using any of the APIs listed here or any of the APIs that are not supported. So it allows you to sort of work around these APIs, and rerun the checker tool to make sure it's compliant. And we provide you all the tools that integrate with the ADT plugin for Android, which allow you to sort of take your APK and directly create a bar file which runs on BlackBerry 10 or the Playbook tablet OS. So all the tools are provided for you to port your Android app. So again, if you want to learn more about this option, do attend Jam813 Developing Android Apps for BlackBerry 10, which covers the Android porting option in more details. And again, do visit the developer website, developer.blackberry.com/Android. And again, DevBlog is a great resource for reading on this option as well, because we do post, our dev relations team we actually post a lot of information about best practices around using the runtime and so on. Yeah, that one is tomorrow. So the next option I want to talk about is cascades. And again, this is going to be a very, very high-level overview. We won't get into the code or anything. It's going to be just sort of a high-level overview to get you started or to help you choose whether cascades is the right approach for you to transition your Java app. So how does cascades fit in? So cascades is basically a UI framework that was created from ground up for BB10. And it uses C, C++ as the programming language for creating your apps. So Cascades, being a UI framework, sits on top of Qt Core, which actually provides you all the APIs, platform APIs, device APIs, and anything you need to do with on the device. All the APIs are provided through Qt Core. And all this actually sits on top of the BlackBerry 10 OS. And so basically, Qt Core kind of encapsulates all the C++ lower level APIs for you, so you can actually have a clean interface to communicate with the device. So what makes Cascades great? So with Cascades, what we have done is we have created a signature BlackBerry 10 look and feel. So when you use Cascades, your application is well integrated with the whole OS. It gives you the BlackBerry 10 signature look and feel. So the controls are actually optimized for the absolute best user experience, and we have done everything possible to give you a complete set of controls to use in your app. You have extremely flexible options for UI development, so you can use C++. You can actually create your components in C++. You can use QML, which is a markup language for defining the UI components for Cascades. Or you can use OpenGL, some of the web tools, or Photoshop to create your UI components, or even create custom components. It comes with a robust IDE with a full editor as well as a design preview, so you can actually see what you're creating, how you're creating your UI before you actually deploy your app or even see it running. So it's kind of like it gives you everything you need to create a great UI for your application. So what I wanted to do here is, because when I talk to Java developers, one of the main questions I get is, I'm using this API on Java side. Is there anything on the Cascade side that I can use? So what I wanted to do is, again, this table is not very comprehensive. It's very small, but it kind of gives you an idea that whatever you are doing on the Java side, it's already available on the Cascade side. So there's nothing stopping you from sort of migrating your Java app to Cascades. So starting with networking. So on the Java side, you're probably used to using coverage info or connection factory APIs. So on the Cascade side, we have Q Network Access Manager to do the same. For file access, we have file connection, which is the standard J2ME file connection APIs for BlackBerry Java. And on the Cascade side, we have QFile APIs to give you the same functionality. And again, same goes for the location provider. If you're using GPS in your Java app to get GPS fixes, we have two classes you can use in your Cascades app. One being the Q geoposition info and Q geoposition info source. So both of these APIs provide you access to the GPS fix, so you can integrate that into your application. For audio video, if you're using the J2ME player APIs, we do have a media player API in Cascades, which actually offers you all the functionality for playing back audio and video, as well as streaming audio and video. So everything is there if you want to integrate multimedia in your application. Invocation, one of the biggest plus point of super app concept for BB Java was you could invoke native apps, integrate with native apps, and that was using the invoke API on BlackBerry Java. So what we have done with Cascades is we have provided something similar, and it's basically the invocation manager class being part of the invocation framework allows you to do the same, invoke native apps, interact with them, and so on. If you're using PIM APIs on the Java side, using BlackBerry contact list or the standard J2ME contact list, we have a contact service on the Cascade side which allows you to look up contacts, to search contacts, to add, edit, update contacts, and so on in your application on the Cascade side. If you're using the viewfinder, camera viewfinder in your application on the Java side, again, you can do the same in Cascades. You can embed the viewfinder. You can grab the viewfinder frames, and so on. So all that is, so basically all the building blocks that you used to build your Java application are already there in Cascades. And again, this is not a complete list. There are plenty of other APIs that have a straight one-to-one mapping into Cascades, making it super simple for you to port your Java app. So another key thing that you need to understand when porting your Java app to BlackBerry 10 Cascades is you need to understand the application lifecycle, because this is one thing that you will find different on BlackBerry 10 when you're porting your Java app. So the application so a Cascades application basically has three possible states. A foreground state when the application is full screen running on the device. A background state when the application is actually thumbnailed and visible to the user on the screen. And a stop state when the application is not running in the background and it's actually not doing anything and stopped. So just to give you an overview, if your app needs to run in the background, so there are two ways the app can run in the background. If the app has been thumbnailed, so if the user swipes up and your app has been thumbnailed and is visible to the user, as long as the app is visible to the user as a thumbnail, it will keep running in the background. If the app for some reason doesn't becomes over, like if a screen overlaps the app, or if the user decides to open another app, then the thumbnail is no longer visible to the user, which means your app is going to stop at that point. Now we have introduced a background permission that you can use. So even if the thumbnail is not visible to the user, your app can still be running in the background. But this is a special permission that you need to request to run in the background. So how is this different from the BlackBerry Java side? So currently we don't support auto start entry point. So if your app is using auto start entry point, you will have to work around this limitation and possibly go for just the background permission and work around this. Again, we do not support headless apps. So if you are using a background entry point on the Java side, where you were running your app without the UI, that is something that is not currently supported. So again, you will need to work around this limitation as well. So to give you a quick overview of the life cycle, so in case when your application does not have the background permission, your app basically starts running in the foreground. If the user decides to swipe up, the app is pushed to the background. And basically, once the app is pushed to the background, as long as it's visible to the user, it will keep running. Now, if the user decides to open another app, or something overlaps the thumbnail, or if the thumbnail is not visible for some reason, your app will be stopped at that point until it becomes visible as a thumbnail again, or if the user decides to bring your app to the foreground again, in which case the app is in the foreground state. Now, if your app has a permission to run in the background, what ends up happening here is, as long as the app is thumbnailed, even if something is overlapping it, even if it's not visible to the user, it will still keep running. So for this, you need to just request a permission, and you can just keep your application running in the background. So any questions so far? Great. So the next piece I wanted to talk about is, again, this is a very high-level overview of the invocation framework. And if you're using the invoke API on the BlackBerry Java side, invoking all the native apps, and you want to do something similar on the Cascade side, so the invocation framework basically facilitates inter-app communication. So what's cool about this is you can not only invoke native apps on Cascades, but you can actually integrate with native apps in Cascade. So you can actually invoke the calendar app and have some of that data being channeled to your app, so you can actually display that data within your app, so the user never has to leave your app. So basically, you're just flowing from your app and displaying information from another native app in your app. So the user just has a constant feel that they don't have to, like BlackBerry Java, you don't have to switch between two different apps to view different information. So some of the supported apps and services using the invocation framework are email, file manager, pictures, music. If you were using services on the Java side, like BBM and push service, they're also supported through invocation framework on Cascades. And this is especially important for push service, because since your application is not running in the background all the time, if the user hasn't started it, push service basically uses invocation framework to invoke your app when a push arrives. So your app will be automatically launched when a push comes in. So if you're using PIM integration on the Java side, we have provided every single piece of functionality that you're used to using on the Java side. So you can create new PIM entries using the Cascades APIs for calendars, contacts, notebooks. You can actually view and edit PIM entries. You can actually search for contacts using different kinds of filters, like you were doing on BlackBerry Java side. You can use a contact picker from within your app to actually pick a contact and get data about the contact, edit the contact, update the contact, and so on. You can notify third parties when a calendar event changes from within your app. And you can also package a calendar event into an ICS iCalendar format. So the next aspect I wanted to talk about is data storage. And again, this pretty much mirrors what you have on the Java side. So starting with the file system, if your app on the Java side was storing things on the file system, sound files, images, text, anything, you can do the same on in a Cascades app. The key difference here is in a Java app, you can actually write straight to the file system. With a Cascades app, it actually runs in a sandbox. So when you're writing files, you get a choice to either write in the application sandbox directory, or you can end up writing in, there are 2 or 3 different shared directories on the file system that you can write to, but you cannot write to the entire file system. So that is something that is not accessible, so something you want to consider when porting your app. But again, we give you a choice in terms of file system. When you're writing to the sandbox, you have a choice of writing to a temporary directory, which does not persist device reboot. And then there's a documents directory, which allows you to save app-specific data that will persist reboots as well. If you're using persistent store and mid-PRMS on the Java side, you can use queue settings on the Cascade side. So queue settings basically allow you to the API allows you to store dictionary type data, and it allows you to, so the data is actually persisted over device reboot. So if you're using persistent store and mid-PRMS, that's a straight transition path for you to use queue settings in your Cascades app. So if you're using Java SQLite, we have a full Cascade SQLite implementation for Cascades apps, and it's a pretty straightforward way for you to port your database if your app is using a database on the Java side to Cascades. So I also wanted to briefly touch on the event model because it's different in Cascades versus what you are used to on the Java side. So Cascades basically uses signals and slots as an event model. And so I wanted to just briefly describe what a signal is. So basically a signal is emitted when an event occurs. And slot is basically just a function handling your signal. So again, I'll be sort of comparing this model to the Java listeners that you're used to using on the Java side. But for now, just know that it's very similar. It's not something completely brand new. It has its own advantages that I'll be discussing now. So what you need to know is all the signals that you probably need to use in your app are already defined for you. So you don't need to go around creating signals. Everything is in the framework for you. So you can actually start using all the signals that are predefined. And you can actually, if you really feel the need of creating your signals, you can actually do that as well. So to give you a quick overview of how signals work. So here we have the button component, which has a clicked signal. And you can actually map the clicked signal to the slider control, which has a reset value slot. So when someone clicks the button, the clicked signal is emitted and goes to the reset value slot, in which case it resets the slider UI control. So how does this compare to the Java listener model? So again, Java listener or signals and slots, they basically both implement the observer pattern where you're firing events, you're handling events, and so on. The key difference is with signals and slots, you only need to connect the signals you need. With a listener, you need to implement all the methods, whether you want to use all the listener methods or not. But with signals, you only need to connect what you need. You can have one-to-many or many-to-one relationships. So you can connect one signal to many slots. You can have many slots connected to one signal, and so on. So it kind of gives you a robust way of communicating between your components. So you do not need to do the listener management like you're used to doing on the Java side. So basically, you do not need to set up the listener, start listening, or anything like that. All that is handled by the framework, and that is one advantage of using signals and slots. You can also connect two signals together. So if you want to connect, for example, the click signal that we just saw to something else, so you can actually interconnect signals so that one signal can trigger another signal, which is pretty cool and can be used for a lot of use cases. So if you're using platform services on the Java side, and again, this is one of the super app features for BlackBerry Java, what I want to tell you today is we support all the platform services on BlackBerry 10. So starting with push service, we support the push service for providing instant information to your users. We support BBM for social integration as well as for viral distribution of your app. We also support the ad API for integrating advertisements in your app. And we also support payment API if you want to integrate digital goods purchases or subscriptions in your app. We also have an API for that. So all the platform services that you're used to using on the Java side are there for Cascades as well. So what I want to tell you right now is if you really want to learn more about Cascades, there was a really great session that is happening as we speak. And I don't expect you guys to run over there because we still have some great content to cover. So that's Jam809. If you missed it, we'll be sharing all the content for it as well as the audio using the portal, the BlackBerry Jam Asia portal that you can access all the presentations, all the audio, and so on. So you can actually view that presentation later on. We have a lab tomorrow, which is Jam823, which I highly recommend you attend if you are interested in developing a Cascades app. Talks about all the UI and user experience for BlackBerry 10 using Cascades and runs you through developing an app from scratch. And do check out the links, developer.blackberry.com/cascades for all the API docs, all the getting started guides, and so on. And also check out the dev blog. And I wanted to give, I would like to hand it over to Amit now because he has a lot of experience in porting his Java app from BlackBerry Java to Cascades, and I want him to come up here and basically give you guys some best practices. So he has a lot of hands-on experience, so I think he can give you sort of like a developer's perspective on what it takes to take your Java app to Cascades. Thank you. All yours.
So hi everybody. As you know, porting porting can be difficult if you are not following the right guidelines or if you don't know how actually we should start with the porting work. So I'll cover up topics related to how to strategize ourselves for the porting work, what are the best practices to be followed, and the tips that I would give for porting BB Java app to BB10. So yeah. So agenda would be porting BB Java app to BB10, where we'll cover up prerequisites that are required when you think of porting your app to BB10. It might be you have to port your application, and your app uses various APIs, hardware features, and you need to know about them and then build demos for this on BB10 before actually going through that development process. So I'll also cover the user interface point for BB Java as well as BB10, where BB Java and BB10 both have a different kind of UI, and there's separate guidelines for them, and it's best to have separate kind of applications for BB10 as well as BB Java. So next is we'll cover up development process based on our strategies that we formulate, and I will share you some references where which can help us develop applications. So let's talk about the prerequisites of developing application for porting applications. So first of all, you should identify the dependencies your application has. Suppose you build an application in BB Java which uses hardware features, which uses platform services, and you should note it down and think of a solution on BB10. It might be that it's already there in the GitHub repository that RIM constantly updates. So you can look into that, or search for this in the forums. So device dependencies, maybe like camera access, GPS access, sensors, magnetometer, accelerometer access. So one needs to know the dependencies that your application is having. Second thing is, your app might be storing data persistently, and so you need to port that, from BB Java to BB10. On BB Java, you might be using RMS, persistent store, or SQLite, and there is different sets of storage mechanism in BB10. BB10 uses SQLite for storage. So next thing, one should also understand the whether your application is using any kind of native access, like if your application invokes the browser with a URL, or it accesses BBM, connects to the BBM, or accesses contacts. So you need to have this similar set of APIs access for BB10, and you need to prepare your component codes for BB10 and then integrate them all for a successful application. Next thing, you need to also look for if your app is using some payment platform services like payment, push, and advertising services. So a similar kind of implementation is there in BB10 cascades, so you can use them. Okay, now when you are done with that, you need to study their feasibilities, prepare demos, as I've told you. So most important thing about developing applications is you need to know the UI guidelines that are quite separate for both the platforms, Java and BB10. So you need to know that building for BB10. There's a RIM has published the whole set of guidelines, how the application should look, what's the application icon size, what color combinations you should use, when to use red color, green colors, highlighting, layouting. So these are all defined in their document for UI. So one should read that, and they have also clearly mentioned that think of your application is what needs to be shown on a screen. What is the purpose of this of this particular screen that you want to show it to the user, and concentrate on that. Move the secondary controls to menus. There are a lot of options available in BB10, like you can move your secondary controls to action bars, action menus, tab menus, and application menus. Application menus usually you add items when you think it's application specific, and context menus, it is when you two or three screens you are having, and you want to have a similar control, and you put your contents in the context menu. So BlackBerry also has a good feature called peek. You can stay in one screen at the same time. You can move to the other screen to just glance what is there inside. So it's a very really cool feature supported by BB10. So use BB10 apps are made to have flow in it. User doesn't need to think about that he has to do this after he has completed with one action. It just comes with the flow. So make your app like that. It has a flow in it, and user just plays it like a game. Other thing, important thing is that try to have the screen much cleaner with lesser controls, so the user is more focused on the application. Next, we'll cover the development process. As you have identified all the prerequisites, you need to do the porting for the identified items from BB Java to BB10. So as I mentioned, you identified reusable portable components. You need to port it. Data access, of course, look for if you're using key value pairs kind of storage. So there's an equivalent for persistent store in BB10. So use that. So hardware-specific features, you need to port it. Event handling is different for both, BB Java and BB10. In BB Java, you might have key down events and touch events. So these kind of events need to be mapped correctly using signals and slots. So native access, again, you need to port it to the BB10. So this I already covered that platform services, if your app is using, so you need to have this demos created for various components and integrate them to have your application successfully up and running. So the last important thing is, in your app might be using some business logic, so written in Java. So port it, test it well, and so that there's no flaw in it. So so in the testing point of view, one should as a tester, one should know that how to differentiate between a BB Java app and a BB10 app. And for that, he should have a clear understanding of the UI guidelines in order to test it. So integration testing should be done for the applications to make sure the functionalities are in place. And testing should be also done for smoothness and flow. BB10 is for smooth applications with flow in it. You just play with the application. So now I'll cover the app that I in InfoStretch have ported from BB Java to BB10. The app name is Measure Treasure. It's basically an app with which you can use to measure distances, widths, and height of any object. So it basically uses camera and device features to do the measurements. So here you can see the app's home screen. It differs from both BB Java and BB10. BB Java, you can see there are a lot of controls in it. There's a zoom, there's buttons placed, and BB10, the main focus area is having just a screen. I'll talk more about that later. So so Measure Treasure app, as I told you, it's for users who are curious about dimensions of objects, and you can measure the width, height, and the distance, how much far it is from the user. And user can also save the dimension information as well as the object's image in a gallery and then share it with his friends. So with respect to the key features that the application uses, application uses accelerometer and magnetometer readings. So when you tilt your phone from one angle to the other, it reads the acceleration and magnetic shift and uses this to do the measurements. Okay, the application also uses persistor for data storage and queue settings for in BB10 for storing the same in same data. It uses a picture gallery for storing the pictures that when you do some measurement, you can store pictures in a gallery. And last thing, it allows users to share pictures. It uses send menu API that is available in BB Java 7.0 and above, and it uses the invocation framework in BB10. So now I'll cover the strategies that are important for doing the porting work. So we identified the prerequisites and demos. I'm talking more in terms of this application that we built. So what were the prerequisites? These were hardware features, access, GPS sensors. We identified these. We looked for whether we have similar kind of implementation done by already available. We looked at in the GitHub repository whether there is samples available or we have to customize them. So these things we did, and we also ported. We also understand that data storage has to be has to be mapped correspondingly to BB10. So these are the prerequisites we understood. Other thing we did was we studied the samples for UI available in GitHub, and we had an understanding of how you can make UI for BB10, and for our development of the application, we studied it and then we implemented it in our application. So now I'll cover the user interface. The best practices that I've already covered it before. So BB10 has to have its own set of UIs. You can have an Android app running on BB10, but the Android app will be an Android app. It can be clearly distinguished that this is Android app and this is a native app. So there has to be a distinction, and BB10 user is inclined to using BB10's kind of UI. You can look into applications like the App World, browser applications. All those applications have the action menus, tab menus, and the features like peek. So these kind of things are only available in native Cascade kind of applications. So as I've already told you, focus on the primary content, move the secondary content, in action bars, tab menus, and application menus. So I'll show you the screens, for the applications that we have built. So in the screens that you can see, the BB Java app has menus that comes from the bottom, and in BB10 we have action menus defined, tab menus, and application menu. So as I told you, action menu is more related to the particular screen that you are focusing on, and tab menu will be for if you have 2 or 3 screens and you want to switch between these, then you can use tab menus. And application menu is basically used less frequently when you think that these controls would be very least used, you put it into the action menus. Okay. So as I told you before, the best practices would be to make the screens more cleaner. We did it by removing unnecessary controls, like we had a zoom bars in BlackBerry Java. We removed it with pinch to zoom. User just needs to pinch and then it will be zoom. And we had also had buttons for doing for taking actions for measurements in BB Java. We remove this by tapping, and you take measurements. So unnecessary controls can be removed. Similar things can be done, like you save automatically when you move back from a screen. You don't need to have a save button. Peek of, as I told you, is a good feature. You get a glance on the previous screen. So continuing with the useful tips, we studied on BB Java as well as BB10. They had grid-based layouts for images that looks really very nice. And showing of, as I told you, the content is the king. Show it fully. When you tap on the image, it shows up the full image. So I'll now cover up some useful references. First is refer to the GitHub library, which has a lot of applications for user interface as well as specific hardware-specific APIs access. Refer to the UI guidelines document. There's a around 92-page document. Read it carefully. It has a lot of cool things, which if you follow, the application will look really very nice. And last, refer to developer forums. There's a lot of things there. If you are stuck, you can find solutions there, or you can ask questions and get your answers. So now I think we can Yeah.
Show the app running on the device.
Yes. So
Can you
can we
switch
have
the
the
projector?
Yeah. So we have the app running. Okay. So you can see the application. In BB10 app, has action menus. There's a action bar here, and there's a tab menu. See how it looks beautiful. You see the application menu here. It comes by flow. You can see the peak from here. So it looks really nice. On the other hand, you can see BlackBerry Java has a zoom kind of feature with UI, and this we eliminated in BP10. We have pinch to zoom. You just pinch it and it zooms. So this is this is what we had done. Yep.
That's great. Any questions? Yes.
You mentioned that one of your strategies was to check on existing applications or demos online on GitHub.
Yeah.
Do I really have to use the microphone?
It's actually for recording, so.
You mentioned that one of your strategies was to check on existing demos and codes at GitHub.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you actually used any of them as is where is. And if you did you actually mention which part or stuff in your code? Is it an open source that you can copy and stuff?
Yeah, when you think of you have to access some. I will give you an example. We had a instance when we had to access GPS, and what we can first do is look for the sample app for GPS in GitHub. We have a sample ready, and then you can. But you are not done with that. Your application might be using a algorithm where it finds the GPS. According to the application requirement, you might be not using the very accurate GPS. It might be a cell site based GPS, which is less accurate. So you need to have the algorithm in place for getting GPS. But for getting started, you can refer to the GitHub.
But did you copy any code?
Yeah, of course. You can use the existing code if you think your application requirement can be fulfilled with that code. You can use it. If you think you need to add something more, of course, as a developer, we should be more focused on what our application requires.
So, to answer your question, yeah, it's completely open source. You can use it as you like. So, if a piece of code addresses your use case, feel free to use it in your application. You don't need to. There's nothing wrong with doing that. All the samples up there are just to help you get started. So.
Thank you.
So, if you guys have any other questions, we'll take them and ask the experts area because we're out of time. And I would like to thank everyone for attending this session. And if you guys have any feedback, feel free to reach out to us. You want to switch back to the projector? We'll just put our Twitter handles here. So feel free to add us on Twitter. Give us feedback, any other comments you might have. I'll be hanging out in the Ask the Experts area, so feel free to reach out to me there. Thank you. Good job.